I'm Zusy Lei and welcome to my library. So I got this fancy lapel mic for my birthday, and all I can think of is this.
Roll.
Oh, Pierre, you shouldn't have come. You are flirting with danger. They will surely find you out. Your head is much too valuable. We are here to talk about books. This is the March 2022 edition, and because I like to, we are going to cover real quickly books I have already finished this year before getting into what I'm currently reading. This is not going to include any audiobooks because I have no idea how to show those things on this kind of a video. So we're just talking print books. I also don't read electronic books, it just doesn't work with my brain. So first, The Christmas Donkey. This is written by Alta, Halverson, Seymour, and it is part of the Christmas Around the World series for France. And it is a story about a boy who lives with his grandma and his journey to get his grandma a donkey for Christmas as a surprise. I read that one with my daughter, to my daughter. Next up, Edenbrooke. A friend loaned me this book. A lot of people call it Jane Austen-esque. It is written by Julianne Donaldson, and it is about a girl who is sent to live with a relative in Bath after her mother dies, and she ends up visiting Edenbrooke and falling in love with the owner of Edenbrooke. But a lot of the story is also about her processing a lot of complicated emotions and about a lot of things, about her childhood, about her mother dying, about feeling abandoned by her father, and also her feelings about this man that she's met. So a lot of big, complicated emotions that she's processing in that one. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, written by Lewis Carroll. This was a read aloud with my daughter. We love the illustrations in this one. It is a penguin puffin book. It's really whimsical, which matches the feel of Alice in Wonderland. And we really like the illustrations, but also how the text will change sometimes. It's not just an illustration, it's part of the story. The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is the first book in the Lord of the Rings series, and I've read them all many times, so this was just a reread, and always a very welcome reread. So, if you haven't read the books, read it, or listen to the audiobook, because it's fantastic that way too. The Crown of Embers by Carson. This is the second book in the series. The first one, The Girl of Fire and Thorns. The names are all Spanish influenced, I think, so maybe the main character's name is Elisa. But in this book, she is a queen, and everybody knows that she has all the nations that she's dealing with knows that she is a godstone bearer, and everybody wants to either kill her or use her for their purposes, and so this is a story about her understanding better the power of the Godstone. The Tangled Skein is written by the same person as The Christmas Donkey, Alta, Halverson, Seymour. This is a book of a Norwegian girl. After World War II, she returns back to her town, and none of her family is there. And there's all these stories about nobody likes her family anymore because there's some pretty bad stories going on. And the title comes from her grandmother telling her that the way that you untangle a skein of yarn is to just find an end and follow it through. And so as she is working on the mystery of all of these stories and finding the truth of the stories, she looks for any part of her tangled skein to unravel what's going on with her family. Both my daughter and I read that one, but we read it separately and we both really enjoyed it. This is the Occident. It is the first half of Richard Halliburton's Book of Marvels. The second one is the Orient. So it covers like Russia and Asia. This one covers the US, but then also goes into South America and over to Europe. So it covers places like the Golden Gate Bridge, Niagara Falls, but then it also goes over to cathedrals like, I can't remember the name, but it's the one where the Joan of Arc statue used to be. And then there's monasteries, the monastery of St. Bernard. This one has pictures, like actual photographs of the places. And like that one's Mount St. Michael. Here's the Rio de Janeiro Christ statue. So this was a super fun travel book, and one thing that made it really fun is that one of the audiobooks I'm listening to right now with my daughter, actually the main character was saying to another character, "Someone's been reading too much Halliburton," and I know that this references this now. Okay, next we're going to cover some read-alouds. There's just 3 of them right now. I say just, it's normal to have a million books going on at once, right? Little Town on the Prairie by Laura Ingalls Wilder. This is the story in which Mary goes off to college. Laura is like 15, 16, that age range. She is studying in school to receive her teacher's certificate and then be able to teach to help support Mary at college. This isn't the first book where she meets Almanzo, but it is the first significant interactions between Almanzo and Laura. Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe it's been a hard read aloud, not just because of the language, or maybe not even because of the language, but because he makes a lot of ridiculous decisions. But we did just get him stranded on an island, and so maybe it'll be more interesting now. Because he seems pretty smart in an emergency like that, and when he's trying to keep himself alive. But because that's been a challenging read aloud, we needed another one, so we chose Heidi. This version is the Illustrated Junior Library version, and it does have quite lovely, mostly black and white pictures, but in these Illustrated Junior Libraries, they'll have full page illustrations as well. Here's a black and white picture they have. And then they have these little ones on every single page. The little ones are different on every page, so they're not the same at all. But that's been a fun way to break up Robinson Crusoe, because we were not picking up Robinson Crusoe ever, which is why we're like 18% way through, and I think we've been reading it since September. That's only 7 months to be 18% through. That's pretty bad. Now these last books for me to share are my personal reads. Some of these have been books I've been reading for a very, very long time, and some of them are newer books. Last Child in the Woods is by Richard Louv. He talks in here about nature deficit disorder, is what he's calling it, the break of children from nature, the problems that we see because of it, the benefits we may see from reconnecting, but then it also goes into what we can do as parents, but also as educators, as a community, as a nation, and why it's important that we focus on it at all the levels and from all these different directions. That book is a focus book for me right now, so I read it often. The Book of Three, this is the first book of the Chronicles of Prydain, and it's written by Lloyd Alexander. This is a book in which it would be a benefit to print out a pronunciation list from the internet and use it while you're reading this book. Then the names are, I don't know, they're based on a difficult language. and so the names, you can certainly make it up on your own, but if you like to say names correctly according to the author, this is a good candidate to look up what that is. This book is about a boy who starts off as an assistant pig keeper, but then ends up on this huge adventure because the pig ran away. The Moorchild, I've got a sticker, a price sticker here. I'm going to deal with that later. This is a Newbery Honor book. It is written by Eloise McGraw, and it is a story about Saskia, who is a moorfolk, but doesn't know it anymore. She was essentially banished from living with the moorfolk. She was changed with a human, became a human baby, and you can see all the humans around her and how she's different. She acts different. She looks different. And over time, she forgets about her moorland life, being a moorfolk. But there's some things that, there's things that you know that even if your brain forgets, your memory remembers, if that makes sense. And that happens with her. She comes across bagpipes, for example, and somehow she knows how to play them, but they're not human tunes. And she doesn't know how she knows how to play them. Is it a natural gift or what? You know, her mother says it's a natural gift. She just knows how to do it. But it's one of those things where she knows because she once knew as a moorfolk. Her brain doesn't remember it, but her body does. Andrew Carnegie. This is a learner biography written by Laura B. Edge, and I'm really enjoying it. I've not ever read a learner biography before, but I have really been enjoying this look at Andrew Carnegie's life. It also includes pictures. So here's a picture of Andrew Carnegie, and other times it's just pictures like this is what he would have I don't know. He would have worn an outfit like this, or this is a building that his steel company was involved in. But I would read more learner biographies. Next up, Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand. This is a really big book, and it's one that I started like 3+ years ago, it feels like. And then I stopped reading it, and I couldn't get back into it. What makes this book hard is that I can follow the basic storyline, But in order to get out of this book, what you should get out of this book, you need to be able to understand and follow the like political aspects of it, and because that is the whole reason for what's happened, like why the characters do what they do and what is going on in the story. Like you have to be able to follow that. And my brain's not done so well in following that over the last couple years, which is why this has been on the back burner for a very, very long time. Like 2.5 years, it was just waiting for me to get back to. And now I am reading it at a very slow pace, but I am reading it. I will finish this book one day. The Lost Queen of Egypt by Lucille Morrison. My daughter picked this book out for me to read, and it is about one of the daughters of Akhenaten, king of Egypt, and I think she's 6 in this book. I don't know. At the point where I still am, she still is 6. I don't know how old she gets over the course of this book, but it's about her life, and it's a good book. I really enjoyed that one. An Island Story by H.E. Marshall. This particular printing is part of the Libraries of Hope printing, but you can find this book in other ways. It is a series of little stories about the history of Britain. It starts with some mythological stories, but then at some point enters into the histories that we do know. The last story I read, they're only a couple pages long. These are short, so it's easy to just read one, easy for children to understand. The last one I read was about Stephen, who was made king by the barons because the barons wanted to do whatever the heck they wanted, and they thought King Stephen would be a great pushover king, and it worked to their benefit. They made their fortress castles. They made their castles like fortresses with dungeons and stuff and did a lot of bad things in it. But that was the last story I read. The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Sometimes you just need a funny thing to read, and that is this book for me right now. It's actually 5 books and 1 story in this whole edition. That's why it's the Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide. The first book is called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm currently in the second one, The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. And one thing that is super fun about this collector's edition is that all of this green is glow in the dark. The Underground History of American Education by John Taylor Gatto. It says volume 1, but the people who printed this one didn't make any other volumes. So in order to read anything outside of this book, you actually have to find one of the originals, which can be hard to find and a little expensive. But I'm not very far in this book. Chapter 1 doesn't start until page 47 in the book, so I feel like I just barely started this book. John Taylor Gatto was a public school educator for New York City. He won awards for doing that. I feel like he's most popular for dumbing us down, and that's a really good place to enter into reading Gatto if you have never encountered him before. Parents and Children. This is Charlotte Mason's second book in her home education series. The first book is Home Education, and this is one where, while you could read each book individually without having read any of the other ones, they all build upon each other. And so reading the first one all the way through allows you to set that foundation. That is good so that you understand Charlotte Mason's views as it pertains to education and life. And then we've got Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos. And I read both the foreword and the overture, so I just barely started chapter 1 in this book, but I've liked it so far. The first rule begins by talking about lobsters and birds, so and how they are about territory. I'm not sure that you need to read the foreword and overture in order to enjoy the book like you did, but I just always really like reading those things first, so I did that. But the actual book is easier to read than the forewords and stuff. So how I approach my reading is mostly I want to work on this backlog of books that I have created over the last 3 years. But I also want to have the flexibility to also read other books as well. So I have a plan, and I'm not going to get it all into it, but one of the things that guides me is the Unread Shelf Challenge. The basic idea is that there are 12 prompts, one for each month of the year, and you should pick a book that fits that prompt off of your shelves among the books that you have not read, and read it before the end of the month. If you haven't finished it by the end of the month, donate the book, because if you were enjoying it and it was important to you, you would make the time to read it. That's the idea behind this, to get you to read those unread books on your shelves. I'll show you. The first one was the book you've been putting off reading, which is Edenbrooke. Edenbrooke was this book. I finished it, obviously. It was in January. It was loaned to me by a friend, and it took me 2.5 years to finally read it. By the time I had read it, my friend had moved away and got herself her own copy, so I could just keep this book. The second February's A Title You Couldn't Resist. I chose The Tangled Skein because I craft a lot. I like yarn and floss, and those are called skeins. So I chose that one. That one was kind of a hard one because a lot of titles are interesting, so how was I going to narrow it down? But that's the one I chose. March's book is Andrew Carnegie, because the prompt was a memoir or biography. I do always have a focus, but every month I want to finish one of my backlog books. So for this month, that's Last Child in the Woods. Other books that are a focus, The Moorchild and The Hitchhiker's Guide. Oh, I guess I read from Andrew Carnegie every day. So these are my daily reads, these 4. These ones I read in the morning, this one I read at night, and then some other time during the day, I read from this stack. These, what is that, 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I'm missing a book. There we go. 7 books. Currently, that's my plan of attack, so that I can read and have a variety, keep it fun, and always learn and have a wide variety. Don't be afraid to have a wide variety of books that you're reading. So, thank you for sitting here with me in my library while I talk about books. Tell me what books you're reading, or if you've read any of the ones that I'm reading, or if any of these have now made it onto your want to read list, and we can talk books. Love you all, and thanks for sticking with me today. Oh, Pierre, thank you for watching. Your time is in danger. Please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Your support is much too valuable.